Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the 12th annual My Favorite Poem community reading, sponsored by the Birmingham Arts Journal and the Alabama School of Fine Arts. This is always one of my favorite events of the year, and it's because it is such a democratic event. It's an event that allows us to understand that poetry is something that speaks for us. When we write a poem, we are not just speaking for ourselves, right? And all the 14 readers tonight are going to read a poem that they did not write, and yet that they feel in some way, shape, or form speaks for them. And that's a really powerful thing. And so I always leave this event with a spring in my step, not just as a poet, but as a person. So that'll be a fun thing. It will also be a fun thing after the reading when you go into the lobby and you have all the breakup cookies you can eat from Church Street Coffee and Books. That is the best cookie in Birmingham as far as I'm concerned. And we pulled out all the stops and got them to bring as many as you could eat tonight. So you got coffee, you got cookies, you got poetry. This is a good night, right? I need to say thank you to the people at the Birmingham Arts Journal, to Darlene Gray, who works tirelessly to coordinate this event every year. And our students are so excited about being involved in this reading. We reserve it for our seniors. And the clamor to be involved in this was so great that we had to make an extra space. So we have 3 senior readers from the Alabama School of Fine Arts Creative Writing Department this year, so we're very thankful about that. Also, thanks to Jim Reed and to Liz Reed. They are the first couple of the literary arts in the Birmingham metropolitan area, and we are proud to be associated with them. And before I get out of here, how many of you know why this is a special year for the Alabama School of Fine Arts? Hopefully all the students and parents and teachers know. Why? If you know, just shout it out. It's the 50th year of our founding legislation was sort of enacted in 1967. And so it's a special year for us. We are celebrating that. We will be celebrating that for the next 5 years, really, because our first graduating class was in 1972, if I'm not mistaken. So we are going to be celebrating. We are going to be looking to put our name out there. So if this is your first time at the Alabama School of Fine Arts, welcome. If it's a time that you've been here many, many times, thank you for coming back. So I'm going to get out of your way, and I am going to introduce the inimitable Liz Reed, the producer of this event, who is going to grace us with a poem that she loves.
This is an old book of poetry. It was given to my father in 1929 when he was 14 years old. And as I grew up, he read poetry to all of us from this book. I'm going to read one that we always enjoyed between, this time of year and up till Christmas. It's called Just for Christmas, written by Eugene Field. I had a brother named Bill, hence this took on special meaning at our house. Father calls me William. Sister calls me Will. Mother calls me Willie. But the fellers call me Bill. Mighty glad I ain't a girl. Rather be a boy. Without them sashes, curls, and things that's worn by Fauntleroy. Love to chomp green apples and go swimming in the lake. Hate to take that cast iron they give for bellyache. Most of the time, the whole year round, there ain't no flies on me. but just for Christmas, I'm as good as I can be. I got a yeller dog named Sport. Sick him on the cat. First thing she knows, she doesn't know where she's at. Got a clipper sled, and when us kids goes out to slide, along comes the grocery cart, and we all hook a ride. But sometimes when the grocery man is worrited, and that is an actual word in this book, worrited and cross, he reaches at us with his whip and larrups up his horse. But sometimes I laugh and holler, oh, you never touched me. But just for Christmas, I'm as good as I can be. Grandma says she hopes that when I get to be a man, I'll be a missionary like her oldest brother, Dan, as was ate up by the cannibals that live in Ceylon's Isle, where every prospect pleases and only man is vile. But Grandma, she has never been to see a Wild West show, nor read the life of Daniel Boone, or else I guess she'd know that Buffalo Bill and cowboys is good enough for me. Except just for Christmas, when I'm as good as I can be. And then old Sport, he hangs around, so solemn-like and still. His eyes, they seem a saying, what's the matter, little Bill? The old cat sneaks down off her perch and wonders what's become of them two enemies of hern that used to make things hum. But I am so polite and tend so earnestly to this that Mother says to Father, how improved our Willie is. But Father, having been a boy himself, suspicions me when just for Christmas I'm as good as I can be. For Christmas, with its lots and lots of candies, cakes, and toys, was made, they say, for proper kids and not for naughty boys. So wash your face, brush your hair, and mind your P's and Q's, and don't bust out your pantaloons, and don't wear out your shoes. Say yes-em to the ladies, and yes-sir to the men. And when there's company, don't pass your plate for pie again. But thinking of the things you'd like to see upon that tree, just for Christmas, be as good as you can be.
Don't you wish everybody were here? Everybody, you know, it's going to be hard to explain how good some of this is. Wait till you see what's coming up. We're going to range from, from science. We're going to have a science lesson. Really, poetry is everything. Poetry covers everything. We're going to talk about courage, horror. It's going to be a horror story at the end. War, mathematics, meditation, love, and just being people like us in this room because we love sharing our feelings through a form called poetry, not realizing that everything is poetry. So we're glad you're here. So, shall we get rolling? The first person to read will be Avery Brooks, who will explain to us who Billy Collins is and what story he has to tell us tonight.
Hi there, I am Avery Brooks, and I'm an ASCA senior. And the poem I want to share with you is from a poet named Billy Collins, who I would guess a lot of you, if not, well, probably not all of you, but I would say most people here have probably heard of. And Billy Collins could be considered sort of an anomaly among modern poets. and that he actually does make a lot of money off of his poetry. And I would also say, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, he is not the quote-unquote deepest poet in the world. And that's not just because his poems are not, to me, like super depressing or anything. Not that there's not a place for that, but I don't really think he has like a full worldview or like philosophy he's trying to communicate in all of his poetry. In my mind, he sort of always just seems like he's writing about what interests him and what he really thinks is worth writing about. And I would call him the poetic equivalent of stand-up comedy, because a lot of his stuff is very observational, like stand-up comedy, and he takes, you know, very familiar things and he tries to make us see them in a different way. And his stuff is also very, very funny, and this poem is very funny. And I won't get super incredibly detailed into the backstory of how I first came across it or anything, but I believe that I first read it about 7 years ago when I was applying to ASFA, and I was trying to, you know, I was told to read a lot of poetry to kind of find out what I could make my own stuff like, and, you know, poetry had always kind of seemed very daunting to me, and it never seemed like something I could do. And I liked writing stories and stuff, and I liked coming up with characters, but I never could see myself as a poet because it seemed like this far-off, unreachable thing. But Billy Collins, you know, this poem, you know, his stuff is very funny, and so it kind of showed me that poetry can be more than one thing, which I guess is the whole theme tonight, so I think it's fitting. And it showed me that, and it, you know, kind of made the idea of being a poet and writer, it made that more reachable an idea in my head. And so I love it for that reason and for many others. And I will also say this is a poem about mother-child relationships. So this is Billy Collins's The Lanyard. The Lanyard. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard, or wear one, if that's what you did with them, but that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the air light and taught me how to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift. Not the worn truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-toned lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. Thank you very much.
That's beautiful because it talks about the importance of a thing, an object that you keep forever, no matter how unattractive or beautiful it is, because as it grows in your mind and as the story weaves around it and spirals out and turns into other stories, it becomes very, very important. There's an old story about the littlest angel, which is all about that. It's all about the importance of memory, and you need things to trigger memory. And Billy had it, didn't he? Thank you for doing that. We're here because we believe, like a lot of other poets and writers and thinkers and artists and imaginers before us and with us today, we really believe what Robert Louis Stevenson said long, long time ago. Listen to this. He said, "The best that is in us is better than we can understand." The best that is in us is better than we can understand. Tonight, we're taking a peek inside some of the best of some of the people here tonight and the people who came before, who wrote the words that we're passing on. We're passing their words through our bodies, through our wind, through our words, so we're joining with them, and we're all linked. We're all linked. Sam Milligan, he likes Edgar Guest. If you've never read Edgar Guest, it's time to go home and look him up. There's much to be learned, both for the young in heart and the young and the geezers like us. So let's see what Sam can teach us about Edgar Guest.
Thank you. Yes, my poem is, first and foremost, I really want to touch you all. That students especially, that you have to have your hopes and dreams. Keep them, develop them. Then secondly, I want to applaud the parents and the school teachers here for 50 years of encouraging and pouring into your children so they can have their hopes and dreams. That's first and foremost. Okay. I came across this poem as when I was pledging fraternity in college some years ago. And I have used it and have forgot it until some things developed, and I came back to it and it helped me make it through some times. Edgar Albert Guest, born in Birmingham, England. He came to this country in the late 1880s, 90s, around that point. His father was out of work in England, and he had an opportunity to come to work in Detroit. So the family moved to Detroit as immigrants, and he started to work. He lost his job after 2 years, and Edgar, who was a student, had to leave school and go to work to help his family. 3 more years later, Edgar's father died. So there was no more part-time work trying to fit it in. He had to leave school completely to help support the family. He got a job, odd jobs, and one of the odd jobs he got, as fate may be, was as a copy boy at the Detroit Free Press. You all who are familiar with that. So he worked from copy boy to cub writer, police writer, and as time went on, technology changed, and we had the radio. So he became a radio broadcaster, and eventually NBC TV also. He's known for writing over 11,000 poems. The poem "See It Through" was used in the 2011 commercial for the Chrysler 300, which is out of Detroit. So he is a Detroiter. "See It Through" by Edgar A. Guest. When you're up against the trouble, meet it squarely face to face. Lift your chin and set your shoulders, plant your feet and take a brace. When it's vain to try to dodge it, do the best that you can do. You may fail, but you may conquer. See it through. Black may be the clouds about you, and your future may seem grim. But don't let your nerve desert you. Keep yourself in fighting trim. If the worst is bound to happen, in spite of all that you can do, Running from it will not save you. See it through. Even hope may seem but futile when with troubles you're beset. But remember, you are facing just what other men have met. You may fail, but fall still fighting. Don't give up, whatever you do. Eyes front, head high, to the finish. See it through. Thank you.
Ain't it nice to time travel? There's so much to learn. Now and then, and how it overlaps is just amazing to me. Well, Sue Scalf is a poet who's written many poems. She's from Alabama. Our next reader and appreciator of Sue Scalf knows Sue and actually worked with her on her latest book along with Liz. And so I'm just imagining, I have not asked her about this, I imagine there's a little extra heart in this because of that. So Brenda Soniger, I want you to tell us about Simple Things.
Good evening, and I do want to thank Liz because of her. I met this lovely lady, Sue Scalf, and found her poetry. I did make a discovery with the poetry, but I lost any chance to do proofreading for Liz again, because that's how I was first exposed to this. But I got so involved trying to read the poetry and understand it that Liz has not offered me a job proofing anymore. But this one, Sue Scalf, paints a beautiful picture of really simple, beautiful things. And in this particular poem, it touches my soul and brings up memories of growing up in Alabama. We were not a wealthy family, but we were so rich in grandparents and memories and the things that they brought into our lives. So this poem is reminiscent of that to this woman. So here we are, Simple Things, Sue Scalf. It was our ritual, coffee and pound cake on the porch in the late afternoon. Thin and frail, you held the cup in trembling hands, saying, "Coffee never tastes so good as when I have it here with you." The days leading here need no retelling. We reveled instead in the peaceful porch, the taste of coffee and cream. Potted plants covered the rails with ferns, widow's tongue and wild asparagus, morning glories grew on strings. Inside the dark screens, the house held the heat, smelled of camphor and mildew, Estee Lauder and sick room, linoleum buckled, plaster cracked, and the closets were dark pits. But in the yards, cannas and peony spread, and sprawling maples offered shade. The click of our spoons, the rattling cups, were lost in the locust whining, the insect sounds of a dying summer. Heads bent, we sipped, broke cake, spoke softly or not at all. porch now, grandmother, not unlike yours, where jasmine and trumpet vines attract hummingbirds. You would have liked it. Sometimes I have coffee there, and I never feel alone. I hold you warm, like the cup in my hand.
Thank you. Are you having a good time? Yes. I'm pleased. I'm pleased. You know how when you love something, you want to share it. You want somebody to listen. You want somebody else to feel it. And you don't always go to the chance, but here's a chance tonight for us to share our intimate feelings without getting intimate. Safe sharing. One of my favorite books by Ray Bradbury is called I Sing the Body Electric. That's not a new title because the title also has been used by other writers. And tonight, Avra Guthrie is going to sing the Body Electric for us.
Okay, first, before I start, I want to say that I'm going to be changing pages a lot. And it's only because I can't see very well with my contacts in, so the words are really big. It's not that long, just to put everybody at ease. But I found Andrea Gibson when I first came out of the closet when I was 19, maybe just before I did. And they gave me the courage to kind of step outside the box that I had placed myself in and be somebody I so desperately wanted to be. And as a child, I grew up with a lot of issues with my own body. And in this poem, Andrea, or as she calls, or as they call themselves in many poems, Andrea Andrew, talks about their body and what it feels like to not feel comfortable in their own body. And now I'm the coordinator of a group, or of a program that works with youth in an inpatient hospital. And I do therapy with kids ranging in age from 12 to 21. And I use this poem and another poem that they do frequently to discuss self-harm or suicide or other issues that a lot of kids these days deal with that are becoming more and more appropriate to talk about. And this poem in particular resonates with me and with the kids that I work with. So without further ado, I sing The Body Electric, Especially When My Power's Out, by Andrea Gibson from the book Flower Boy. This is my body. I have weather vanes. They're especially sensitive to dust storms and hurricanes. When I'm nervous, my teeth chatter like a wheelbarrow collecting rain. I am rusty when I talk. It's the iron in me. The doctor said someday I may not be able to walk. It's in my blood like the iron. My mother is tough as nails. She's held herself together the day she could no longer carry my niece. She said, our kneecaps are our prayer beds. Everyone can walk further on their knees than they can on their feet. This is my heartbeat. Like yours, it is a hatchet. It can build a house or it can tear one down. My mouth is a fire escape. The words coming out cannot care that they are naked. There is something burning in here. When it burns, I hold my own shell to my ear and listen for the parade. When I was 7, the man who played the bagpipes wore a skirt. He was from Scotland, so I wanted to move there. Wanted my spine to be the spine of an unpublished book. My faith, the first and last page. The day my rib cage became the monkey bars for a girl hanging on my every word. They said, you are not allowed to love her. Tried to take me by the throat to teach me I was not a boy. I had to unlearn their prison speak, refuse to make wishes on the sheriff's star. I started wishing on the stars in the sky instead. I said to the sun, tell me about the Big Bang. and the sun said, "It hurts to become." I carry that hurt on the tip of my tongue and whisper, "Bless your heart," every chance I get, so my family tree can be sure I have not left. You do not have to leave to arrive. I am learning this slowly. So sometimes I look in the mirror and my eyes look like the holes in the shoes of the shoe shine man. Some days my hands are busy on the wrong things. Some days I call my arms wings. Well, my head is in the clouds, and it will take me a few more years to learn that flying is not pushing away the ground, but safety isn't always safe. You can find one in every gun. I'm aiming to do better. This is my body. My exhaustion pipe will never pass inspection. And still my lungs know how to breathe like a burning map every time I get lost behind the curtain of her hair. Find me by the window, following my path to the trail of blood in the snow. The day I opened my veins, the doctor who stitched me up asked if I did it for attention. For the record, if you have ever done anything for attention, this poem is attention. Title it with your name. It will scour the city bridge every time you stand staring at the river. It never wants to find your body doing anything but loving what it loves. Love what you love. Say, "This is my body. It is no one's but mine. This is my nervous system, my wanting blood, my tongue, and my half-tamed addictions. Tied up like a ball of Christmas lights. If you put a star at the top of my tree, make sure it's a star that fell. Make sure it hit bottom like a tambourine, because all these words are stories to the staircase to the top of my lungs where I sing what hurts, and the echo comes back, bless your heart, bless your holy kneecaps. They are so smart. You are so full of rain. There is so much that is growing. Hallelujah to your weather veins. Hallelujah to the ache, to the pain, to the fall. Hallelujah to the grace and the body and every cell of us all.
Wow. Well, that poet did what lots of writers do who once give up their inhibitions, don't try to be sequential or logical, and just let it out. And then the beauty comes out. It reminds me of that quote by Rousseau. He said, "To write a love letter, we must begin without knowing what we intend to say, and end without knowing what we have written." Feel that way? Isn't that beautiful? Okay, I'm all into this. I hope y'all are. By the way, just to let you know that everybody here is more than they are when you look at them. They're writers, published authors, poets, singers, artists, all in this room, all over the place. And we could spend a half hour talking about each person here, even the people in the audience. And we won't. We just want you to feel them in the moment. But my point is, get to know them. If at the reception, walk up and introduce yourself to somebody. You will turn over, this nice little veil or this rock, either one, and you'll see something really interesting that you hadn't expected. One such person who has many levels and is always interesting to talk to is Chervis Isom. He's going to bring back Matthew Arnold and talk about Dover Beach for us.
After the previous poem, I think I should just leave. We have two readers tonight who are seniors in high school, and that reminds me of the fact that when I first saw this poem, when I was a senior in high school, which is exactly 60 years ago, 1957 in Phillips High School, I was not a good student. In fact, I was a poor student. I was not interested in school. I delivered papers morning and afternoon. And I was a serious young guy, but not serious about school. In the 12th grade, I had an English teacher, Miss Holloman, who told me, the first person who ever told me, you need to be making better grades. You are bright. First time anybody ever told me. I guess I picked up a little with that, but I did begin to appreciate for the first time poetry. And I remember Dover Beach. I don't know why it struck me, but somehow it was melancholy. It spoke somehow to my loneliness. I was 17 and I was going through a lot of changes. I was losing faith in my fundamental church. I was losing faith in my Jim Crow culture I grew up in. And for the first time, I had a girlfriend. I remember, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I read the poem to her. I think she thought I was a nut. It spoke to me. Come to the window, it says. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. It was, good stuff. Imagery, it had lots of great imagery of the sea, of the light across the channel, the roar of pebbles on the beach. Pebbles. We live here, the Gulf Coast, we have sand. But in Europe, in places, on the North Sea, on the Aegean Sea, there are pebbles that get slung back and forth as the tide goes in and out. So this is really a poem of imagery. You read the poem and you think, well, there's no rhyming. But the rhyme scheme is so intricate, it's hard to see it, but it's there. You need to look at it. The philosophy of Dover Beach is really interesting. It was written in 1867. Only 8 years earlier, Charles Darwin had written his Origin of the Species, and which was about the beginnings of the concepts of evolution. Up until that time, the whole scientific community was never in conflict with the theology of the church, but this really undercut the whole theory of creationism. Faith was something that was becoming in short supply. This poem spoke to me on a lot of different levels. Let me just get to it here. Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, 1867. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet as the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound of thought, hearing by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here, as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarm of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Thank you. Wow.
Are you surprised at how varied poetry can be, how the energies are different every time, how they can be bombastic or low or enthusiastic or sexy or, we haven't got to the horror yet, but we will. But this will show you what poetry can really do and how you can meld science and math and poetry all together and make it damn funny and damn entertaining. One of my heroes when I was a kid was a comedian named Tom Lehrer. And I assume that Jeff Youngson is going to tell us a little bit about him, and he's going to talk about the elements.
My name is Jeffrey Youngson, and yeah, I'm going to talk about Tom Lehrer, of what I know, because I didn't really do any research. So. Yay. From what I know, he is from, I think, Boston, somewhere around there, and that's about it. So, I learned about this poem. It was a couple years ago. It was requested to me by a chemistry professor at the University of Alabama who went to our previous church. He was like, here, you might like this. And so I watched the video and I was like, I do like this. So I decided to memorize it, which I did. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, it's the Element song. Oh yeah, by the way, probably gonna mess up. It's kind of like a tongue twister-y thingy going on. Yeah. Anyway, the Element song by Tom Lehrer. There's antimony, arsenic, aluminum, selenium, and hydrogen and oxygen, nitrogen, and rhenium, and nickel, neodymium, neptunium, germanium, and iron, americium, ruthenium, uranium, europium, zirconium, lutetium, vanadium, and lanthanum, and osmium, and acetine, and radium, and gold, protactinium, and indium, gallium, and iodine, and thorium, and thulium, and thallium. There's yttrium, ytterbium, actinium, rubidium, and boron, gadolinium, niobium, iridium, and strontium, and silicon, and silver, and samarium, and bismuth, bromine, lithium, beryllium, and barium. There's holmium, and helium, and hafnium, and erbium, and phosphorus, and francium, and fluorine, and terbium, and manganese, and mercury, molybdenum, magnesium, dysprosium, and scandium, and cerium, and cesium, and lead, praseodymium, and platinum, plutonium, palladium, promethium, potassium, polonium, and tensile, technetium, titanium, tellurium, and cadmium, and calcium, and chromium, and curium. There's sulfur californium, and fermium, berkelium, and also metallidium, isonium, nobelium, and argon, kryptonium, radon, xenon, zinc, and rhodium, and chlorine, carbon, cobalt, copper, tungsten, tin, and sodium. Yeah.
Written by a Harvard professor who said there may be many others, but they haven't been discovered. That covered them all up to the time he wrote the piece. Anybody remember Tom Lehrer, or am I the only old guy here? Yeah. Some do. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful. Thank you for waking us up. What are our greatest fears? Well, Ashley Tate is going to talk to us about that.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Tate, and I'm a four-year creative writing senior here at ASPA, and tonight I'll be reading Our Deepest Fear by Marianne Williamson. So I remember being a little girl, about 6 or 7, brown and skinny like a twig, and laying at the foot of my mother and father's bed when I first heard this poem from the movie Akilah and the Bee. We were watching the movie on DVD, and I kid you not, my mom replayed the poem about 10 times, making sure I took in every word, saying, "You got that? You got that?" And as simple as it may seem, this poem is powerful and has gotten me through so many moments that have seemed scary in my life. If you would have told a timid 7-year-old me that I would be doing what I'm doing today, my little eyes would have popped out of my head in fear. Yet, I clung to this poem and read it whenever I felt terrified of doing something out of my comfort zone, or if I felt like I wasn't good enough for the world. Every time I read it, I believed more and more that it was in my power to control the fear I felt and experiencing growth or something different. And when I finally grasped that I had the power within me without having to read the poem, it might have been one of the most life-changing moments I've had yet. Our Deepest Fear by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful. beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you.
We're going to be so inspired, we're going to levitate by the time This is great. Well, we've covered science. Now it's time for arithmetic. Robbie Wilmarth will introduce us to this subject.
I came to arithmetic by way of Carl Sandburg when Liz asked me if I would read my favorite poem. And I said immediately I would, anything, Carl Sandburg's. And I discovered one I had never read before. And it surprised me. As a junior high student in Lincoln, Nebraska, we performed in a choral reading evening of Carl Sandburg, and it was fabulous. Just the sound of the voices doing his rhythm, all of us in unison, conducted by the choral director. It's but spoken. I don't know that it's done anywhere now, but it was a great, great exposure to his poetry and the rhythm of it. Years later, that was about 1951. In 64, I'm waiting at the gates in Atlanta at a gate to take me to Chicago for whatever the holiday was. And in that 30, 45-minute period in waiting, in walks Carl Sandburg and his wife, taking the same flight to Chicago. And whatever happened, my son, who was 2 years old at the time, and Carl Sandburg had a great time. He pulled cookies out of his pockets to feed to Elle. And he gave him little things that would have been from the Rutabaga stories, probably, if I know later. But it was a beautiful 30 minutes, 45 minutes of seeing him with children. He could entertain them just unconsciously. He was beautiful with kids and adults. And then when Liz asked me to share my favorite poem, I also realized that my eldest granddaughter has just graduated from Middlebury, Vermont, with a degree in math. And I went to this graduation, and do you think I asked the question, why math? I mean, I think I asked it after I came back of somebody and said, wait, if she got a degree in math, you can just name her price with Bill Gates or whoever. You know? But it was math. And then this leapt out at me when I'm looking up Chicago and other things that I'm quite familiar with. Arithmetic. Arithmetic is where members fly like I'm going to need glasses. Arithmetic is where numbers fly like pigeons in and out, off of your head and in of your head. Arithmetic tells you how many you lose or win if you know how many you had before the loss or the won. Arithmetic is 7-11, all good children go to heaven, or 5-6 bundles of sticks. Arithmetic is numbers you squash from your head to your hand, to your pencil to your paper, till you get to the answer. Arithmetic is where the answer is right, and everything is nice, and you can look out of the window and see the blue sky. or it's when it's not, you can't stay, or the answer is wrong and you have to start all over and try again to see how it comes out this time. If you take a number and you double it and you double it again and then you double it a few more times, the numbers get bigger and bigger and goes higher and higher. And only arithmetic can tell you what the number is when you decide to quit doubling. Arithmetic is where you have to multiply, and you have to have this multiplication table in your head, and you hope you won't lose it. If you have two animal crackers, and one is bad and one is good, and you eat one, and a striped zebra with streaks all over him eats the other, how many animal crackers will you have if somebody offers you 5, 6, 7, and you say no, 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 and you say nay, 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 and you say nix, nix, nix? If you ask your mother for one fried egg for breakfast, and she gives you the 2 fried eggs, and you eat both of them, who is better at arithmetic, you or your mother?
We have secrets. Thank you, and thank you for, I've never met anybody else except my one buddy who was with me at the time who had met Carl Sandburg. I spent time with Carl Sandburg one time after one of his concerts, and just by sheer accident when I was a kid. And he was like that. He was just totally there for whoever wanted to talk. And my buddy Doug Bleitcher and I just had a great time talking to Carl Sandburg. We thought that was the height of life, to be able to talk to somebody that we love that much. So thanks for sharing that. Now, our next reader is going to do 2 iterations of the same poem, which is going to be fascinating unto itself. And I'll let him explain it to you. But I call him NJ because I'm embarrassed, and I don't want to embarrass him by mispronouncing his name. If he got up and mispronounced my name, you know, he'd be embarrassed and I'd be, so I'm not going to even try because the syllables do not flow off my tongue like a name should. So I will advance an apology to him, and then I'll say, you're going to love him. This is NJ.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. It's Niranjan, by the way, in case if anybody is wondering what he actually mispronounced it to. And again, thank you so much, Liz. And she has been great, and thank you for making my life easy in Birmingham, actually. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. And when she said, you know, we have this thing going on, it's really beautiful, you would enjoy it, and if you have any favorite poem you can read. The first thing I did is, okay, favorite poem, you know, it has to be like, either it has to be about love. Everybody, you know, whenever they say poem, it has to be about something with love and everything, or very deep meaning. I started looking at something and it's like, not this one, not this. I was actually picking the poems, which were not my favorite. Then there was this poem that was always stuck in my mind, maybe because my teacher in school, she read it so well and she explained it so well that, you know, I thought that is the reason why I didn't really understand the meaning of it when she was doing it. I was around 12, I guess. But in my daily life, when I started growing up, here and there, 1 or 2 lines from that poem used to, you know, flash in there. Okay, this might have been the meaning, what she's trying to, you know, convey when she was reading the poem. And here it is, and I might take a little longer than other people because, you know, I have to read it in my own language and also have to translate it to you. I hope you have the patience. So here it goes. This is from a poet called Siddhaya Puranik, and he's one of the, not the oldest poet, but the guy who was writing his poems and everything during the time of independence in India, where India is like filled with a lot of people with different cultures, different languages, castes, and religion. So we have a kind of, I don't know, I won't call it a mess, but it's kind of beautiful. But yeah, so the poem is, ಓದಿ ಬ್ರಾಹ್ಮಣನಾಗು ಖಾದಿ ಕ್ಷತ್ರಿಯನೇ ಆಗು ಶೂದ್ರ ವೈಶ್ಯನೇ ಆಗು ದುಡಿದು ಗಳಿಸಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಆಗು ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು ನಿನ್ನೊಲವಿನಿಂತಾಗು ಏನಾದರೂ ಸರಿಯೇ ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು. So here it says, as in India initially we had like 4 castes, like the person who reads or who studies well is a different caste, so he becomes like a professor or the teacher or the advisor to the king and everything. And the person who is strong, well-built, who fights, he goes to the protecting of the soldier and everything like that. So he's in a different condition, he's in a different caste. So, and at the same time, the guy who's in the lower caste who cleans or who, takes out the garbage and everything, we call him Shudra. So they have a different caste. So you can study and you can become a professor, and you can fight and you can become a soldier, or you can clean and you can become the guy who actually keeps everything clean and nice. No matter whatever you do, no matter what you work, despite of all these things, you're a human first. Be a human first. And then here it goes. Hindu Musalmanane agu, Bauddha Kristane agu, Charvakane agu, Boga bayasi. ಏನಾದರೂ ಆಗು ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು ಹಾರೈಸಿದಂತಾಗು ಏನಾದರೂ ಸರಿಯೇ ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು. So here again in India we have like a lot of religion. So you can be a Hindu, you can be a Christian, and you can work really hard and you can be a big time merchant, you can make a lot of money. You wish whatever you want to do and be whatever you want to be. But before all this, you be a human first. And this is the last stanza. ರಾಜಕಾರಣಿಯಾಗು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಭಕ್ತನೇ ಕಲೆಗಾರ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ವ್ಯಾಪಾರಿಯಾಗು ಏನಾದರೂ ಆಗು ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು ನೀ ಬಯಸಿದಂತಾಗು ಏನಾದರೂ ಸರಿಯೇ ಮೊದಲು ಮಾನವನಾಗು. So here the last stanza says, you can be a politician, you be a politician, you are popular, make a lot of money, and then, and this one more thing they say, like I'm a patriot, so I'm an American, I'm an Indian, and I'm a Pakistani, or whatever it is. And you can be an artist, and you can be a scientist. Whatever it is, before all these things, before being an Indian, before being an American, or before being a politician, whatever it is, before all this, you're a human first. Be a human first. Thank you so much.
Wow, we're getting a master's degree in poetry, aren't we? Isn't this beautiful? All of this, it seems to me, is a journey that we're all taking, whether we even know we are or whether we even want to take it, we're taking it. We're on our way to being ourselves, a more complete version of ourselves. Bill Murray, the Bill Murray, said this, and I'm reading the quote directly to you. The only way we'll ever know what it's like to be you is if you work your best at being you as often as you can, and keep reminding yourself that's where home is. Find poetic vision in many places in this country and elsewhere. Well, not everyone, perhaps most of us have heard this expression all of our lives. And not many of us have heard the poem, at least not since school, millennials ago. No Man is an Island, and I can't wait to hear it read by Charles Youngson.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you, Liz, for inviting me to read this poem. My name is Charles Youngson. I'm a priest at All Saints Episcopal Church over in Homewood, where Liz is now a member. And it was hard to choose a favorite poem, but this one came to mind pretty quickly. And it's not technically a poem, as I found out. It comes from a prose passage in a series of essays published by the English poet John Donne in 1624 during a time that he was very ill. And it comes from a meditation number 17, in a book called Devotions Upon Emergent Occasions. Now, John Donne was a metaphysical poet. He lived in the 17th century, and he wrote, love sonnets and even some erotic poetry. And he did not become a priest in the Church of England until later in his life, when King James I really insisted that he should become a priest, and thank goodness he did, because he wrote wonderful religious poetry as well and served the Church of England well. And so part of the reason I chose this is because I'm an Episcopal priest. The Episcopal Church comes out of the Church of England. It's the American version of it. This poem has been very influential. I imagine most of you have heard it before. Martin Luther King Jr. quoted this poem in one of his speeches. It inspired the titles of books by Thomas Merton and, of course, Ernest Hemingway. And it reminds us that we are all in this together here in this world, that we are all connected at the deepest level. And so I think that's a message we all need to be reminded of in these days. And so here it is, No Man is an Island by John Donne. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Thank you.
We need to hear that. We need to hear that it is possible to reboot, to refresh our souls just from a few words of poetry. I hope you'll take that message with you and think about it. Oh, by the way, we've got 3 poems left. Just keep this quote in mind. Nick Laird said this, and I wrote it down today because I thought it was exactly the way I felt. He said, I don't think there is any law where you have to read a poem and immediately understand it. Don't worry about whether you get it all or whether it will come to you. It will soar. It will come back to you in various ways, particularly if it's beautifully written, as most of these are. And it will tell its own meaning to you. And it really doesn't matter whether it's not the meaning that the poet intended. But if you get meaning out of it and it refreshes you and helps you, and you find your own world in those words, then I think it's equally worth it. Okay? So don't just listen to your teachers, although you should. Listen to yourself too and say, what did I get out of it? Regardless of who the poet was, whether famous or unknown, what did I get out of that? It's an important question to ask yourself now and then. Well, I want to know, I'm not sure I know this next poem, and I'm interested in knowing what Emma Camp has to say. The title is The Words Come, They Choke Me. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Emma Camp. I'm a senior here at ASFA, and I encountered this poem about a year ago as a result of a Facebook page for teen writers, and we were kind of passing poems back and forth. And it has kind of haunted me ever since. So for some context, the poet Layla Chatty is a Muslim American poet, and this piece was written in response to a 2015 incident in which 3 Muslim college students were shot and killed. And what I love so much about it is what it leaves unsaid. The words come, they choke me, for Dea, Yusser, and Raisin. Too many times I have written this poem, blood, a dark ink, moon, a bullet hole. My tongue flaps useless as a bird. The words come, they choke me. Somewhere, always smoke. Somewhere, always something burning, something snuffed. The sun set again, bled like a wound. I stood, nothing could move me. The words went on spinning tiredly, and just like that, I survived another day. I breathe, and life keeps coming. It feels simple enough that I know to be suspicious. Tonight, dark as a flint chip, candles each a pinprick. I swallow a flame within me, shelter it as the sky dons her black veil. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, now we come all the way from the beginning when we had the producer of this event to the near end where we have the founder of this event. Irene Latham created this from scratch 12, 13 years ago, and we're blaming her for it now. And we're so happy she's given us 12 years of new inspiration and new thought and new feeling that we didn't know we had. And so it's only appropriate to have her come up and show herself off to you, because she's a profoundly good writer, novelist, poet, children's book writer, and just a really nice person in all. We love her. We just love her. Here, Irene.
And TJ introduced Jim and Liz as Birmingham's first literary couple. And I would just add that Jim and Liz are my Birmingham parents. So we're all part of the family here. And as much as I'm honored to be honored about founding this event, anybody can start something. And I did just happen to start this thing. But it's Jim and Liz and Darlene and TJ who have made this thing happen year after year. So let's just give them another round of applause. The poem that I've selected is from Blossoms by Lee Young Lee, and I'd like to read the poem first and then offer a few comments about it. From Blossoms comes this brown paper bag of peaches we bought from the boy at the bend in the road where we turned toward signs painted peaches. From laden boughs, from hands, from sweet fellowship in the bins comes nectar at the roadside. Succulent peaches we devour, dusty skin and all, comes the familiar dust of summer, dust we eat. Oh, to take what we love inside, to carry within us an orchard, to eat not only the skin, but the shade, not only the sugar, but the days, to hold the fruit in our hands, adore it, then bite into the round jubilance of peach. There are days we live as if death were nowhere in the background, from joy to joy to joy, from wing to wing, from blossom to impossible blossom, to sweet impossible blossom. I moved to Birmingham in 1984, and before that lived all over the Southeast and overseas, but I was born in Georgia. I'm a Georgia peach. So in all honesty, I think the first thing that drew me to this poem was the peaches, and also that it brings to mind one of my warmest family memories, and that is of spending summers at my grandparents' house. They lived in Port St. Joe, Florida, which is between Apalachicola and Panama City on the Panhandle. And my grandfather loved to garden. Gardening was his passion. For years, it was his passion. And so he was good friends with the owner of the Piggly Wiggly, Buddy Anderson. And so Buddy each year would ask my grandfather to go over to Georgia and bring back a bunch of peaches. And this was an event. I can remember sitting on the porch steps waiting to hear the rumble of his truck, old Ford green 150 truck. It was just, it made a lot of noise, and we waited for him to come in with the peaches. And then as soon as the engine was cut, you didn't smell gasoline anymore. You smelled that scent of peaches. And it's where I became a peach connoisseur. I can tell you that Alberta are the best peaches. So if you are at the farmer's market, ask for the Alberta peaches. But it's not just about a personal memory. As TJ and several others, Jim, have mentioned, poetry is so much bigger than that. And to me, this poem kind of gives a recipe for living. To live in the moment, to devour those moments, the sweet succulence of peach, and in the fellowship that when that can happen. I strive to live in that way, and I wonder sometimes how different our world might be if we all lived from joy to sweet, impossible blossom. Something to think about. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you. Be sure to meet people outside. Be sure to eat the cookies. Be sure to thank the parents of the writers who voluntarily get out there and help us. Be sure to thank all the folks who help make this possible. And be sure to look on the website within the next couple of weeks, because videotape, or whatever they call it nowadays, images of this, moving picture images of this event will be there. If you just need to look at yourself over and over again, whatever turns you on. But I want to thank everybody. Now, in honor of Mike Royer, who agreed years ago to MC this event every year, to relieve me of the burden of having to be someone without a name, to get somebody with a name, with recognition, like Mike, to come up, and he did this every year. Every year he read to us this wonderful poem written by Robert Service. Now, Robert Service, just basically all you need to know, because you can Google him and Wikipedia him all night and find out much more. But he was a rough and tumble character who lived 100 or so years ago. And he spent a lot of his life out west and up in Canada and in the Klondike and in Alaska, living among really rough characters and people who were basically freezing to death and trying to find gold, trying to find their fortunes and trying to find their independence, and just getting out there in the elements we can't even think about without down here in the South. We're so warm and comfortable most of the time. But in a bar one time, he met this old miner, a guy who was trying to mine. He was out there looking for gold, freezing in the Klondike. And the guy told him the story about having to cremate his best friend. There's the horror we've been waiting for. This is the poem that Robert Service wrote, and it shows you what a narrative story can do if you just sort of tell the story and then think about what kind of meaning you want to put into it at the very end. Okay, this is called The Cremation of Sam McGee. 110 years ago today it was published. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The Northern Lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge. I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the South to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold, through the Parker's fold it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then the lashes froze till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars overhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me, and Cap, he says, I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of moan, it's the cursed cold that has got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. Yet 'tain't being dead. It's my awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. A pal's last need is a thing to heed. So I swore I would not fail. And we started on at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee, and before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, hard-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains. Now, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb and my heart, how I cursed that load in the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies, round in a ring, howled out their woes to the homeless snows. Oh God, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow. And on I went through the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice. It was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then, here, said I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared. Such a blaze you seldom see. And I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear. But the stars came out, and they danced about. Ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked. And it's time I looked. Then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. And he wore a smile, you could see a mile. And he said, please close that door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge. I cremated Sam McGee. Thank you for being such a lovely audience. Thank you for not dozing off. Thank you for not rolling your eyes. Thank you for listening and opening your heart. Let's go see what the parents have for us out in the lobby. And please shake hands with somebody and say, thank you for loving poetry.
We're looking for
Just leave it on. Just want to forget it, I think.
No, we're looking for
Break it.